Well, everybody, I want to just welcome you all to today's event. For those of you that I haven't been acquainted with before, my name is Frank Troika, and I am retired from band directing about 5.5 years ago, 31-year career music educator, and now I do tremendous amount of work with Conn-Selmer. I'm also the director of education for an organization called System Blue. It's the educational and product arm of the Blue Devils Drum and Bugle Corps. So I get to stay pretty immersed in the music education thing in spite of my retirement. In fact, the irony is, and Alfred, you may relate to this, truth is I do more teaching now that I'm retired than I really did when I was in the classroom because I don't have the administrative tasks bogging me down like
exactly
they
right. That's exactly right.
My colleague in the room is Alfred Watkins. Alfred was the band director at Lassiter High School for many, many years. In fact, I remember meeting Alfred for the first time in the early 90s when I was an assistant director to Phil Geiger at Westfield High School in Houston. But I'm not going to presume to tell you all about Alfred's many accolades. I'm going to ask him to toot his own horn for a little bit and tell us a little bit more about himself. Alfred?
Thank you, Frank. Not much to toot, everyone. My name is Alfred Watkins. I, too, had a 31-year career in the classroom. I taught for 6 years at Murphy High School, which was in the inner city of Atlanta, a very poor, impoverished community. Developed a good band program there. After 6 years, I left and became director of bands at Lassiter High School in Marietta, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, and spent 31 years doing those two. Retired 7 years ago, and now we're at our 21st or 22nd season with the Cobb Wind Symphony. I'm the founder of the Cobb Wind Symphony, music director, and conductor. That's pretty much what I do full time. Is I'm a band director coach. That's what I call myself. And I go from rehearsal room to rehearsal room, and I spend a couple days with teachers, and I help them with in-services that are personal. And I'm a band director coach. And I introduce myself as a band director coach, no different than a swim coach or a golf coach or a hitting coach. And so everyone needs a little help along the way, and I enjoy doing that. I spend a lot of time in the classroom.
So if you're spending this much time coaching band directors, does that mean the door is open for the people attending the session to stay in touch with you, Alfred?
Absolutely.
Excellent. I am typing something in the chat window right now. There's a session tomorrow evening. I've already mentioned this. Forgive me for being so repetitive here. But I mentioned that tomorrow afternoon, my last session of the day tomorrow in the afternoon is called Questions You're Afraid to Ask. We're going to extend that session into the evening skull session for anybody who would like to join us. And I'm putting that link in the chat room right now. There's an anonymous Google form that you can go to ask those questions, submit those questions anonymously so that we can then have them addressed by a panel of experts tomorrow afternoon and evening. So I want to invite everybody to consider joining us for that session as well. So this session is entitled Dealing with the Doubt. And this is a little bit inspired by the fact that I'm now teaching at the collegiate level. I've been doing that now for the last 3 years as adjunct faculty. And I've seen some of my own students wrestling with some of the things that sometimes cause them to question, did I make the right decision going into to be a music educator? Most of the students I work with are in their 3rd or 4th year of college. So I'm getting them after they've kind of been in it for a little while. But I personally had some doubts along the way. And they were doubts that were sometimes fostered by my friends who were outside of music, who seemed to have it a little bit easier. They were talking more about their income potential and those kinds of things. And that seemed like maybe I wasn't really on the same level as they were. Like maybe I didn't have as bright a future. But I found out I was wrong. And I just thought it'd be great if we could maybe get some of those things to rise to the surface. There was one time not too long ago where, well, near the end of my career, where we had a ridiculously large number of kids in our band program that thought they wanted to go into music education. In fact, we did a survey and we found 40 kids that were thinking about going into music education. And whereas that might seem like, wow, that's awesome, it really made me nervous because I think that they had a different perception of what majoring in music is. Sometimes we think majoring in music is majoring in band or majoring in choir or majoring in orchestra, and that's not what being a music major is all about. And so when you get into college and you start to get into those weed out classes like ear training and sight singing and oral skills, music theory, class piano, it's so easy to get caught in a downward spiral because those are all things that you have to practice. Unless you've already come with keyboard skills, unless you're a great singer, which I am not, and I prove regularly, then those classes can be very daunting. I remember having to practice a ridiculous amount of time in my piano class so that my skills would be high enough to pass the barrier. So sometimes it's those things that kind of come along that surprise us. We think, I didn't really realize that I had to learn about form and analysis if I want to teach conduct music. Alfred, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just a few, and thanks for opening up so well, and welcome to the group. You mentioned just doubts. I was in a conversation, I think last week, on a session much like this with two composers. One was Frank Kelly, and one was Omar Thomas, both very, very accomplished composers, and they got into a one-to-one Zoom to the question and answer for themselves, and doubt came up. And both of them said, oh my gosh, every piece that I write, I'm afraid that no one in the world will like it. And we're talking about Tick Kelly. And he just said there's always doubt in what we do. And so we all go through it. I went to college to be in the school marching band. I didn't know who my trumpet teacher was going to be. I knew who the band director was. I had seen that band on the field. I didn't know much about the structural parts of the program, and much about the symphonic or chamber organization, but I wanted to be in that band. So I was one of those that went to college and majored in band. In my mind, when I first left home, it didn't take long to figure out by watching the older role models that it was going to be a full comprehensive study of music. But he's absolutely right about the weed out classes. And I think what causes them is that, as Frank mentioned, we don't quite know the structural components of music give us our musicianship along with our applied instrument. But the structural components and music theory is challenging. And I need to tell you about it. It's challenging. Some students have a knack at it, and some students don't. If you struggle with piano a little bit, that's natural. I saw an awful lot of students change their majors because of class piano.
Yep.
And most of it was because they just didn't practice. Just in practice, they wanted so many things to come easily for them that came easily for you on your student line instruments. So that's something I would caution you about. But what is making sure that you apply in all of your classes, particularly your structural classes, I like to call them the weed out classes, the same way that you apply to learning to play an etude, or learning a solo. If you take the same personality with it to the classes, then you won't have to change it all. Well, it's personality traits will just stay with you.
When you talk about music theory specifically, I was lucky because I had a teacher that gave me a music theory book. So when I went into college, I'd already had a working knowledge of music theory. So that freed me up to practice the things I needed to practice.
See, I wouldn't have liked you very much. You were the kid in class who answered all the theory questions about the inversions and French sixes. Yeah, that was you. I got it.
I would have made you feel very good about your ability to sing. And I've never heard you sing, but I can guarantee you that you would feel better after hearing me. You know, the thing that we don't do it, and I'm speaking about myself right now, and maybe at the collegiate level, I don't think we always do a very good job of showing the relevance of what we're doing. Why are we studying music theory? Well, if we have any oboe or saxophonists in the room, oboe players or saxophonists in this session, you probably know Fairling etudes. And if you know Fairling etudes, you know that if you studied what keys they're in and the arpeggios and the modulations, if you understand the theory behind a Fairling etude, you can teach it without ever looking at the music. This is so important for us as teachers to look for those things that simplify it for our kids. You know, we point out to them, you realize this is just a D major arpeggio right here, and that's a B minor scale. And it's so we can kind of demystify it for them. That's what music theory is to show us, you know, that there are some predictable things and some commonalities and some structure. And we have a lot of kids that get into the science of that too, the logic, the science. Yeah, Alfred?
Yeah, one of the things that happens in music schools, and it happens particularly in classical music. Jazzers aren't this way. Folk singers and folk artists aren't this way. But for some reason, classical musicians try to make everything sound like it's really complicated. And when it sounds like it's very complicated, then it's a challenge that I can do and you can't. And it's not that complicated. There are only 12 notes in music. You can only move them two ways, step or skip. And that's the whole shooting match. So I too had a trumpet professor that taught me to play my etudes and solos theoretically, and just so I could navigate what I was doing at the time. So he's exactly correct. So the D major scale would just start on a different note of the mode, and then but I was just trying to learn my scales and piano, and he's talking about the modulation here. But what went in did not come out, and that was important for me to learn. So what goes into a student, they have a potential to give it back out. If you don't put it in, then there's no way it'll come out other than by happenstance. And it's not a really good way of working.
You know, there's also such a long gap between when we start as music education majors, because when we start off, we dream of being that teacher, the teacher that inspired us. But there's such a long gap between the time when you start music education as a freshman and when you actually get out there and practice it and you're actually in the field. So much of it is this academia and the solitude of the practice room, and so it's easy to lose your enthusiasm because you get kind of caught up in all of those tasks. And then, of course, if you have friends in other academic disciplines, they seem to have more free time than you did. I remember I would take 14 credit hours and I'd have 10 classes. And my friends who were majoring in chemistry, they had 3 classes in a lab, and they were always partying, and I was always practicing, you know. And I kept thinking, man, where's the equity here, you know? So that was one of the things that I kind of dealt with. And then as I listened to them talk about their income potential in their particular career paths, I started thinking, well, have I consigned myself to a life of poverty? And no, the answer to that is no. The myth that teachers have to accept, you know, a life of poverty and all that is not, that's not accurate. You know, I mean, we have the luxury, if we choose to become entrepreneurs in a way too, because our teaching schedule generally will allow us to branch off into other things and develop our own talents that to help, such as doing things like this. You know, I've got former students of mine who have done a great job of carving out a niche for themselves, in addition to the career path they were on. And, you know, if I could just give you a little advice too, just some things to set yourself up. And Alfred, I'd super love to have your comment on this, but, you know, I alluded to this in an earlier session with the new teachers. You know, when you get that first job, you're going to feel like you're rich because you've got an steady income. And for many of us, that's the first time you've gotten a check that big and coming in regular installments. You know, you just got to continue to live a meager existence for a while till you see where that money goes. And you start investing that money in a nice, safe retirement account in addition to whatever the school district or your state puts away for you. Because there's no reason why you can't, when that time comes eventually, you look forward to that retirement, that you can't have a really nice, comfortable existence.
Let me add a bit in there also, and I agree 100%. One thing that I'd encourage you to think of is you are responsible for your own future. You make your own decisions as to how you choose to live your life till retirement and beyond. Those are all personal decisions. And don't let anyone deter you from what they think should be your career choice. You hear a lot of it in school. And a lot of times the performance majors, for example, they're waiting on a seat in Chicago Symphony to open up just so that they can fit into it. And you're a music ed student. There's a good chance that many of you will be directors in schools. And there's no dishonor in that. You have the same credibility in life as anyone else does, but you carve your own path. We heard the same things too, but I wasn't going to allow anyone to tell Alfred Watkins who he should be. I would take advice and counsel from my parents and my siblings, and that was about it. Mm-hmm. So so you have to learn how to carve that path for yourself and go and work with local school bands, but volunteer. And someone along the music school will say, I wouldn't do anything for free. You'll hear that. Don't do anything for free. You're just giving away.
Right. I
Go ahead.
disagree. Hey, Alfred, let me interrupt for just a second because I failed to mention earlier. If any of you have any questions you'd like to post in the chat room, please
Yeah.
feel free to go ahead and enter those at any time. I would ask if it's actually a question as opposed to a comment. There's a little button you can click there that will flag it red as a question, and that way we'll be able to sort through those very easily when it comes time. And we'll be happy to take some of those along the way too, because this is really intended to be more of a discussion than a lecture per se. Hannah just said, my doubt is more focused on, am I good enough for these kids rather than should I even be a music teacher? I love ear training, piano skills, music theory, music history, form and analysis, and I nailed this kind of stuff in college. That makes one of us. Awesome. Good for you, Hannah. But I will be a good teacher. Will I be a good teacher for my kids? Am I good enough for them? And that's where I start to feel unsure and worried. Alfred,
May I start the answer? May I start that answer, please?
I'm
Hello,
here.
Hannah. Hello, Hannah. I like to wave at people, although you can't wave back, but at least you know we're here. I felt the same way about today. I wasn't sure that I would be good enough to give you any information today to satisfy your needs. And it's been with me all of my life. It's very natural. And the more you are uncomfortable and think that you're not capable of doing a good job, if it doesn't overwhelm you, you'll be just fine. Which means you'll take life and you'll take your job seriously. Doesn't make you nervous. You just wonder whether you can measure up or not. And that keeps you learning. It'll keep you growing. It'll keep you excited. Now, the contrast is also true. You can evaluate yourself so much and be so hard on yourself, you lose your ability to smile. And you certainly don't want to do that.
Well, and Hannah, you also kind of nailed it because as Alfred and I were talking about, there are these weed out classes. You just said you're doing great in all of these. And the purpose of those, actually, when I call them weed outs, I don't mean it to sound like it's trying to separate the wheat from the chaff and that you're somehow unworthy if you struggle with any of these. What I'm saying is a lot of people give up because they get behind, not because it's too hard. They just give up because they get behind and it feels hopeless to them. So if you are good in all of these things, well, then you're satisfying the compulsories, which are the best indicator of your potential as a music teacher. Am I good enough? Yeah, if you're doing these things, you've got the information, you've got tools, and that's what we all need to be good at what we do. We have to have information, we have to have tools, and that's what you're equipping yourself with by doing so well in your classes. And the other thing is, you go watch other teachers, and just like, when you were learning to walk, you watch and copy. When you learn to speak, you listen and copy. When we play a musical instrument to a large degree, we listen and copy. Watch great teachers, and it's okay to adopt some of their things into your own teaching. The way we learn is by copying others who are good at what they do, and then that allows us to find our own voice as well. So Hannah, I haven't met you, but there are indicators that yes, you are good enough based number one on your question, the fact that your attendance here, and of course, you're going to stay in touch with us all, and that'll give us an opportunity to continue exploring
May
that.
I add a bit, Frank?
Yeah.
And Hannah, just remember, and to all of you and that are so kind to come into our room today, you can learn from any musician, and don't think that you have to go and learn from just the band director. So when you're on YouTube and someone with a soprano teacher at the Juilliard is giving a master class to a student on opera, listen to it. And you'll find out that the process of growing, the process of learning as a musician is the same across all disciplines. Listen to Yo-Yo Ma playing. Listen to Yo-Yo Ma talk about how he plays. And you'll just have a much broader, expansive life than just living in the world of music and musician. Of course, teaching is an important component, and you'll study that as well. But don't just think you got to find the teacher down the street and copy what they do. And branch out and explore and be exciting. And you'll keep that excitement, that little childhood excitement that Frank and I still have.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, Alfred, because the fact that we are still teaching is remarkable to me. Because retirement is not synonymous with stopping. In fact, it's kind of funny. Like I said, I teach more now that I'm, quote, retired than I ever did when I was on the podium. So that was something else I didn't realize I had to look forward to, but I do. But there are some things that caused me great doubt while I was an undergrad. And one of them was my perpetual poverty, because I just didn't have any money. And I was always struggling to put another couple of gallons of gas in my car or pay the rent, those kinds of things. my car was breaking down a lot. And I had people that looked out for me and gave me rides and occasionally borrow their cars. But one of the beautiful things that came out as a result of that is that oftentimes when I was stranded someplace, it would be at Lake Highlands High School in Richardson, Texas, where I would watch private lessons or watch section rehearsals or go to a beginner class with someone. Because I was there, I wasn't going anywhere because I was kind of stuck temporarily, but that opened up the door for me to observe. So one of the things that was really lucky for me that kept me enthused and kept me fired up about being a teacher through my 7 years, 6.5 years of undergraduate work, that's how long it took me, I know, don't judge, was the fact that I was around these people that I wanted to be like. They were such good teachers. I was deathly afraid of revealing my ignorance because I wanted so bad for them to think of me as one of them. But the way you bridge that gap between being an 18-year-old high school senior and a 22-year-old music teacher, during that time, teach privately, donate your services if you need to. You know, sometimes you can make some money being a marching tech while you're in college, but it's okay to donate your time too. If it allows you to get hooked up with a good program where you can observe, and sometimes you just go hang out. You reach out to the director of the program, you ask questions, and you just say, "Can I come observe?" And then maybe there'll be an opportunity in a rehearsal where you'll be available to do what I call a 911 pullout, where a section's having trouble, and you're there, and you can take the section out and work with them. And now, lo and behold, you're teaching, and you start to build a reputation, and you start to get excited now about why and you start to reconnect with what you came into this in the first place for. Alfred, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to. I forgot what it was. It wasn't. Oh, I know what it was. Let's just move to a question because I had Joseph's answer. Joseph. I'm not sure where you're from. Joseph Rodriguez. What's your best advice for people who think they've hit the wall? Service. How can you serve others? And the wall will move past you, and as opposed to I'm overwhelmed with all these things that I have to do. I do a lot of to-do lists, a lot of them. You'll love this. I don't think I've ever gotten to the bottom of it. Because what I do is when I have a to-do list of 20 things, I'll mark the first 16 or 17 off, and then I will have accumulated another 12 things. But it keeps me interested, it keeps me active, it keeps me from hitting the wall, and I always wanted about 25, 26 hours in a day. But if you remember that part of what you want to do is to serve others and make sure that others, I call it the Santa Claus clause. It's an agreement that I had with my 12th graders every year, in that I would always identify Santa Claus as the world's biggest lie. And we did it, or we do it in many places, because it brings joy to children, young children. And so pastors tell the Santa Claus story, parents tell the Santa Claus, the grandparents tell us, and then at some point in time the kid figures out that it's not really the truth. And it's so the Santa Claus clause says that you should help someone else create a smile that day in your discipline and in what you do. And so that was always the challenge of my 12th grade class when I taught. It was a secret between Mr. Watkins and the 12th graders, and I asked them never to share it with an underclassman or a parent. And I called it the Santa Claus clause. So when they would hit their wall, going into their senior year, when they could do most things the band required to do, but they had to wait patiently as the underclassmen learned their parts, or learn their drill, or learn their parts on second, third parts, then the Santa Claus clause would say, take them off to the side, build a friend, and help bring a smile to their face. The Santa Claus clause.
I love it. You know, Joseph, something else you can do too is remember there's nothing you're going through. There's no wall you're going to hit that hasn't been hit by somebody else. And chances are they just figured out how to go under it, over it, around it, or through it. There's some preposition that will work for you. And so go look for people that have been on the path you've been, maybe somebody a little bit older than you or even a lot older than you that can help you they can share with you what they did to get past that wall, because we're all going to hit them. And when you take the training wheels off the bike, the first thing that happens is you fall. And when you get in that classroom, it's going to happen, and you're going to feel like a failure. And you've got to embrace those moments, because it's those moments where you feel like you hit the wall that make the peaks so much more satisfying, because it's that contrast. So I promise you, Joseph, whatever that wall is, it can be circumnavigated. Just got to reach out to the people that have been done before. And if you don't know who, well, then check with one of us and we'll help you find that person. Amanda says,
Noah's got one.
Go right ahead.
Noah's got a question, if it's okay with you.
Well,
Noah's question is, when gaining experience, how do you keep yourself humble and open-minded to new ideas? And I think you just answered it. You keep yourself humble by not allowing others that may happen to have a big, unhealthy ego to creep into your soul, to creep into your personality. And you just chart your own path. And if it's based on humility to start off with, then you won't change that path. So don't let anyone or anything around you. If there are some performance majors that are playing a passage and you're struggling with just a little bit, go and practice it. Just practice it. They don't have anything extraordinary because they have that. I was a music ed major and I practiced 6 hours a day, 2 in the morning, 2 midday, and 2 in the evening. I did my academic studies in the middle of the day between classes. I did my music academic studies at night. And so I was a music ed major, and that was a path that I had chosen to make for me. And I tried to make myself organized in terms of doing it. So just keep your humility about yourself and don't allow for anyone to go in. Plus, you remember that we have a real vast world of music, not a world of just bandom, a vast world of music. About once every 2 summers, I would go into my room and listen to all 9 of Beethoven's symphonies. He was my favorite composer. Listen to all of his symphonies, just almost in a 2 or 3 week span. I skip a summer, I go right back and listen to him again. I'd write the keys down and do the things what I actually do, but I'm learning Beethoven's style. I wasn't ever going to teach Beethoven his eroica, and I never have. I've never conducted eroica. But it's the artistry that I was trying to find, and that was helpful to me.
I think we might have skipped a question here.
I'm sorry.
From Amanda. Let me jump back there real quick. She says,
sure.
I care so much about being the best teacher I can be for my future students. Rather than my own skills within the classroom, I'm worried about the interaction and challenges I'll face with administration, funding, etc. I'm worried I will not be able to assert the importance of my program and advocate for music enough to help my students. That's a valid thing to be concerned about, Amanda. And that's a responsibility we have. Rather than waiting until a time when you have to defend your program, start right up at the very front, documenting the things that are working. So you have all of these successes and things. Look for things that happen in your music program that further the achievement of your students in their other classes, things that you do to support the community, that you do to support the school environment by providing music at different events, by volunteering. I used to volunteer to do the math Olympics. I'd volunteer to go tutor kids on Saturdays, not because I wanted to give up yet another Saturday, but I knew that when I showed up there, my kids were kind of freaked out. Well, you know math, for one thing. And the other thing was my faculty, my administration looked at that as like, yeah, he's really about kids, not just about his music program. He's really about the kids. So those are legitimate concerns to have. And I guess to be worried about it is a good first step, but understand that there are so many resources available online and through the network you're building here at Conn-Selmer to address those things specifically. But the best thing we can do to advocate for our programs, or at least one of the best things, is to document what we do on a daily basis. The way we challenge kids, the intellectual engagement, the artistic engagement. Look for ways to track their progress in school and connect it to their experience in your music program.
I just have 2 things I can think.
Sure,
2 things.
sure.
I'll move on 30 seconds. All of you, everyone on the line here, take something out, type it in, and write this down. Hashtag, I've learned that. Hashtag poco a poco. Little by little. The steady progress of the tortoise always beats the hare. Hashtag Poco or Poco. Two more things. Think of cell phone cameras, collages based on the cell phone footage you put together, and movies based on the footage of your students and having a good time, and make it for them so you can change the atmosphere of the classroom to one that's artistic, yet there's a little bit of fun in there. And you give them that dosage of fun, and you can do it yourself just with a cell phone camera. Your generation is the digital age, and you know it all. Sorry, Frank.
No, not at all. Next one? Eric asks, what is something that you wish you knew when you arrived on campus for that first semester of college? You want to take that one first, Alfred?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I should have learned to keep my mouth closed, listen more, and speak less frequently, and practice my piano and theory as if it were a part of my future as opposed to a class. And that's what I would suggest.
You know, I think what I wish I had known, and I would go back and reboot, is I didn't practice my instrument like someone trying to win an audition. I've satisfied the requirements. I practiced, I got better, I advanced, but I saw myself less as a clarinetist and more as a conductor or teacher. And there's nothing really wrong with that, but you can do both. If I could go back and do it again, the thing that I wish I had done stepping on campus my very first semester is to pursue my instrument like someone who is a performance major, because the better we get at our instrumental craft, the greater understanding we have of how to teach. Because when you put your instrument down and pick up the baton, your new instrument is that ensemble in front of you, or that kid looking at you like, what position is G flat in? And that's when we have to have the answers. And the more you are skilled and the more you have challenged yourself to be at the highest level, the better you're going to be equipped to challenge your students to achieve similarly. Ashley says, how do you recover from not knowing an answer? Let's see, Alfred, have you ever been in a situation where you didn't know the answer to something?
No, that's never happened to me. That never happened to me in my whole life.
Yeah. Ashley, I'm sorry. You might have, Alfred.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just don't ever think you have to know everything. Just say, gosh, I cannot remember what position that is. I'm sorry, I don't remember that fingering, but I'm going to find out for you. If you just say, I don't know, and then you work to find out, then that's perfectly reasonable. But do know where you can find the information. I'm a clarinetist like you. I had French horn I struggled with until I finally just sat down, looked at the overtone series, the fingering, started figuring some things out. So we all have our Achilles heel. We have all those things that are sort of our shortcomings, but just don't try to pretend you know something you don't, but then come back and find the answers.
Just a brief synopsis of what I was thinking about that. It's exactly to err is human. When you make a mistake, I missed it. Sorry, let's try it again. Don't go like another 2 or 3 seconds and stop and then ignore it as if no one noticed. I lead an all adult band with 65 music majors in the room, and occasionally I'll miss a 3-4 time in the middle of something, and I'll get off and keep going, and I'll cut, and now I'm comfortable enough to say, "Did I miss that?" Mm-hmm. And the whole band yells out, "Yep, you did." And in high school, they wouldn't have said that. They would have smiled. "Yep, you did." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back and do it again for me." And I'll try to get that the next time. And be mindful. Write this one down. Ella Fitzgerald, Grammy, Mac the Knife. Ella had a live performance of Mac the Knife that she did in a location, and it's like a 4 or 5 verse tune. And she did the first 2 just fine and forgot the words. One of the finest singers of any type that's ever lived. And she just said, "I forgot the words," and she sang her way through it, making up words on her, the fact that she forgot the words. And she won the Grammy that year for Best Jazz Instrumental Vocalist. Ella Fitzgerald, Mac the Knife.
Wow, love it.
She made it up for it.
So Madeline, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, so forgive me. Teaching is way harder than I thought it would be. It's one thing to know music, but it's a whole new thing to teach it. To make it worse, I realize how much I don't know. That's a great sign. The first year early on, it's called uninformed ignorance. You don't know what you don't know. The next level is informed ignorance, and that can be scary because now you know what you don't know. It's not until after that point where you get past the informed ignorance that you start to find your own rhythm as a teacher. So far, Madeline, I'm encouraged by what you're saying. But you say, to make it worse, I realize how much I don't know. How do you overcome this? I know it's part of the learning process, but I feel like I'm going to burn out before I even become a teacher due to the stress.
No, you won't.
No.
Yeah, you will not. Just remember that when you graduated from whatever level you graduated from, the exercises were called commencement. They told us all very clearly, it was a Latin for to begin, I believe. And so commencement is not an ending, it's a beginning. So now you've gone from being in the Mississippi River into the Gulf of Mexico. It's wider, it's deeper. Then you go from the Gulf of Mexico into the Caribbean, wider and deeper, and then you're out into the abyss of the Atlantic. And that's all a process of, and you're like a little fish that goes through. So the Mississippi River or the Ohio River that bleeds into the Mississippi is what your formal education is. And so we all go through it, we all understand, and we're all in the same boat. And we're all learning today.
Yeah, it also, you have to associate with other people who are going through the same thing you are. There is strength in numbers. They say that pain shared is pain divided. And if you can get together, have a NAFME chapter, have an informal group, a study session, practice session, whatever it is where you get together with some of your colleagues and just, informally even share what you're going through, and you'll probably find solutions to those things just because you're surrounding yourself with other people and you realize you're not alone. It's that isolation that sometimes can be so troublesome and so confining. So work to expand that circle, because there are other people out there that feel the same way you do. Is it Jalen? I have aspirations of one day conducting an orchestra. I've been in band since middle school, but orchestra these past 2 years. I don't have much experience with strings. I'm sometimes doubtful of how I could reach that goal. Any advice? Yes. First of all, you have to learn about string pedagogy. That's essential. So start learning how to play strings. Also, I would suggest you study piano, just so you're a competent pianist. And these are all things you really have to work hard at. Now, if you're talking about being an orchestral conductor, a professional conductor, virtually every orchestral conductor plays the instrument well enough to sit in that orchestra. So you've really got to be on that level. So you've got to pursue it at a very, very high level if you aspire to conduct at the level of someone who's teaching a major orchestra. If you're talking about teaching at the collegiate level, those requirements aren't quite as stringent. So it depends on kind of what you're really looking for and looking toward. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, just another way of looking at it. Probably the greatest band master that we've ever had that has given us what we are today was John Philip Sousa.
Oh, yeah.
Sousa was a violinist. And he learned the wind instruments as he went about because he wanted to be a bandmaster. And another great bandmaster in our history was Dr. William D. Ravelli from the University of Michigan, signature conductor, signature director in our band's history. He also was a violinist. But he told me that he took the train every Saturday to Chicago from Hobart, Indiana, and he studied an instrument with a member of the Chicago Symphony and Orchestra Hall. And he went to the concert that night and took the train back home the next day. Did that for about 3 or 4 years. He learned the pedagogy of the wind instruments after his former years. So, Frank, I couldn't agree more.
Ethan says entering into college for the first time was a little overwhelming, and I'm still dealing with the compounding responsibilities that I'm facing. I'm curious, considering your experiences, as to how you kept yourselves from going a little insane through college. We all go nuts in college. Oh my gosh. That's why you have your social outlets. That's why you can still do some crazy things. Now be safe. I'm not putting my rubber stamp on.
I'm not crazy.
Well, yeah.
I'm not crazy.
You if anything that you invest yourself in so fully and that you immerse yourself in, it's gonna feel like you're kind of overwhelmed at times. So we all, I shan't say we all, absolutely felt like that at times, but that's when you have your social outlet as well as your musical one. And you know what? Not everything you do has to be centered around a classical curriculum. Go to rock concerts, go to clubs, get together with people and just listen to music and enjoy the fact that music is not about any one thing. It's completely encompassing. But again, all of these things, these questions you guys are asking are just so great. And I'm having flashbacks. I would call it PTSD, but it's not really, because in many ways they're kind of fond memories of the doubts I had that at the time seemed so limiting and so frightening to me, that I look back on now and think, if I could only have tapped into the future just a little bit earlier, it would have been. And that's the reason for this session, is to kind of share with you that really, if there's anything we can drive home, that Alfred and I can drive home right now in this last minute or two, is that, again, it's the networking. There's nothing any of you are going to go through that we all haven't experienced at some point, and I mean, it runs the full range. And yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Frank. I apologize. No. I want to give you a twist, just a little different, which is exactly along Frank's lines. It's a little controversial, and if you say you heard it from me, I'll deny it. There's only so much room in the supercomputer for information. And sometimes so much information can come to you. It's difficult to sort out its importance. A good friend of mine from years back named George Parks, he's one of the leading drum majors, marching band director at UMass. And when he did his drum major clinics, he would tell his students in the drum major class, star thoughts, just a star. In other words, just take notes, don't forget this one. Star thoughts. So everything isn't a star thought that comes in here and in here. And so you've got to figure out how to let some of it slide over here or fall back in the medulla or someplace where you can pull it up when you need it. But that will help you to sort out what really is important and what isn't. And that helped me get through my life. It's just star thoughts.
We have two other questions I'm going to try to answer in the 90 seconds we have remaining. India, if you want to keep practice playing your instrument, my advice would be, rather than start your own ensemble, which is going to occupy you from an administrative standpoint. Alfred knows he conducts an adult group. Find a group that you can belong to, where you can focus on your craft, on playing your instrument, rather than having to be the administrator for that ensemble as well. Joseph, what was your biggest regret from your first year of teaching? Biggest regret, boy. That's like walking into a museum and trying to pick the best painting. There are so many. Joseph, if you'll email me, let me share some thoughts with you, because I don't think I can narrow it down to one. And to do justice to your question, I think I need to spend more than 30 seconds on it. So everybody, thank you all so much. Any closing remarks, Alfred, before we close things down?
I'm just it's been a wonderful visit, and best wishes to you. I put my email address down there someplace earlier. And
it's Frank Kroik, but it's awatbnd@gmail.com.
I put it in the chat room. It's in there.
Yeah, but it's got my name next to it. So.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, okay. Because remember.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
Yep, I'm your alter ego. Look, if there's any last thing I want to share with you, Alfred said a little bit ago that he had doubts doing this session. Is he going to deliver something that is going to be of value to you? The doubts are always there. That's what motivates us. That's what helps us find the best in who we are. The moment you think you've arrived, forget it. You're nowhere. Celebrate those momentary arrivals. Enjoy those moments where you've reached this benchmark, and then be ready to move on. That makes this so much fun. Thank you, everybody. Stay in touch. Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you, Frank. Enjoyed it.